back to my channel. So tonight's case is an update on the Idaho 4. If you've followed us for a while and subscribed to our YouTube for a while, you will know that we have already done the Idaho case long before Bryan Kohberger was arrested or anything. It is also on our playlist, Crime Stories. If you haven't already seen it, go over and check it out. But this is the update. So the gag order has been removed, but as much as it's been removed, the sealed documents are still sealed. People don't know much. Stephen Gonzalez is not very pleased about it because he might never know how his daughter actually died or what her complete injuries were because it's not went to a trial. What I want to touch on tonight though is Bryan Kohberger, just dig a little bit deeper, because I have predicted that he's not guilty of this crime and I do stand by what I say, but the details I'm about to give out may make you think different. So what they've said is, which I didn't even know, I possibly did but I don't remember, that Bryan Kohberger was actually a heroin addict and he had a very, very bad addiction. He also had gained a lot of weight, 125 pounds to be exact, and eventually he decided to reinvent himself, lose weight and got himself off the addiction. Now he came from quite a rough neighbourhood. His father was a handyman at the school and he eventually ended up falling into some sort of council run course that allowed him to go on and start his criminal journey in more ways than one, where he was given basically funding so that he could then do his degree, which he then was heading towards being a professor, or that was one of his assignments at that point. Now, Bryan Kohberger did put up Facebook posts in his teenage years, basically saying he was like the devil, and also that he didn't understand people and they didn't understand him. So he was already at that point projecting something out of awkwardness, weirdness, which again, I think we need to be very careful at how we say it, because it doesn't matter what this person's done, he has autism. And obviously at that time people were making judgments on that. Now he ended up getting into the teaching fellowship, and when he got in there he basically got a girlfriend who was Korean, but she didn't speak much English. And what had actually happened was, when the police spoke to her, she'd said that she felt that he was too good for her and that he was quite judgmental. But at that point they were still together. He'd also been pulled into the office 3 times because of his behaviours towards the students. The students said that he would taunt them, he was quite abrupt with them, and what had actually happened was, one woman was walking to her car and he had followed her and ambushed her at the car, and she had went and reported it. Now in this time they were having these meetings with him to say, pull up your socks, you're going to lose your teaching fellowship. And by the 3rd meeting, he had pulled his socks up and there was progress, but that instant had took place with the car and the woman. So what actually happened was, he had decided he was going back for Christmas, back home. Now this was round about the time of the murders and that everything had took place. The police were already on to him. His father had came to pick him up to take him back, and they were meant to not take as long, but they went south through Colorado. And I think it's because Bryan Kohberger knew he was being followed, but they'd been stopped twice on that journey, and the father said at that point he was getting quite suspicious as well. When they got home, Bryan Kohberger was putting his rubbish into like plastic zip bags, so it went into the garbage. So it's like he knew something was going on. The sister also had said to the dad, like, he only lives 9 miles from where this has happened. He's acting very strange. He was out washing his car. He was scrubbing the car from top to bottom. The family at this point were very aware. Now, in this time, the police had gathered evidence, and it was a nice sheath where later on we found out there was a bit of DNA on the buttonhole. So they were working with that, but they used the genealogy site, easy for me to say, which is prohibited, but they didn't also tell Moscow police that's what they had used. So Moscow police were acting on the fact that they had DNA that came back and that had matched, but they were unaware at this point, and it had not been revealed that how they got the means to this DNA. So that's an argument in the court case, as we already know, on its own. But they had actually been surveillance following them back right enough from Pennsylvania right up to through Colorado, so they were shocked that they'd went that way as well. The minute they got the news that the DNA matched, Bryan Kohberger was in his parents' house. It was 1 a.m. in the morning. They got the helicopter out. The helicopter was there as well. They said that Bryan Kohberger ran from the kitchen to the garage and put the car lights on, before he was intercepted. His parents were also put in ties while they were doing their investigating. They wanted as many devices as possible at that point. Something I should mention, the lady that he was dating had jewellery stole out her room, and she asked Bryan to put in a camera so that she would be able to monitor it. And it was later found by the police that he'd also been logged into that camera where he could watch her at any time. Now, the ironic part of that was the university had sent him a letter on the 13th of December to say your teaching fellowship is now going to be ended because of the complaints. The letter was sent to his address where he was a student, but he'd left to go back with his dad and they hadn't emailed it, so he never actually found out, because after that he was arrested, that he had lost his teaching fellowship. Now, it is said that his intention was for Maddie. Now, she was a waitress where she worked, they did vegan food, and Bryan Kohberger was a regular customer. It's not known if they ever actually spoke or communicated with each other, or he had just seen her and laid eyes on her. It was also said, I don't know if I believe this, but a schoolgirl sweetheart of his had rejected him, and this had stuck with him for a lot of years, but I don't believe it. Kaylee and Maddie were in bed at 2:30am. They gave their boyfriends 11 missed calls at this point. Nobody answered, so they've obviously fell asleep together. It is said that Bryan Kohberger went through the sliding door at the kitchen. When he's got in, he's went up to go to the left. It is the second floor where the bedrooms are. And he's went straight up the stairs looking for, apparently, Maddie. He's walked into the room. He has took Maddie's life first. Kaylee has put up a fight, but eventually he's killed her as well. As he's coming back down, Xana's caught him in the act. He's then murdered Xana, and Ethan has been in the bed. He's then went and murdered Ethan. Now, as he's then sat, apparently, for 5 minutes because there was a chair with bum prints, basically, of blood. And he's obviously maybe been in the zone. At that point, he's walked out to leave and walked down to the kitchen, and that's when Dylan bumps into him. Now, she doesn't make any noise. She just sees him, and he looks at her and she looks at him, and then he goes. Now, a lot of people say, well, why didn't he take her life? He could have been in the zone and maybe just woke up to what he's done, and if she'd spoke, maybe she could have been the next victim, but she didn't speak. She then ran back to her room. She texts Bethany. Bethany tells her to come down. Now, they go down to Bethany's room, and the statement basically says that they aren't sure what's happened, but they're actually, none of them sleep. They're on their phones the rest of the night, speaking to their friends, speaking to their parents, sharing photos back and forth, and it takes them until 11 o'clock that morning, 8 hours before the police are actually contacted to say that this has actually happened. Now, the kids did say at that time, the police didn't tell them anything when they got to the house. Ethan's brother found out, basically out in the street path through friends, that he'd lost his twin brother. But also, like we said, it took all that time to phone the police, but they weren't out sleeping, they were on their phones. Are you telling me they didn't see that crime site? Or they didn't see what had happened? Or what were they taking photos of? Now, it was also said, an hour and a half after the murder, Bryan Kohberger was on the phone to his parents for an hour and 5 minutes. Now, if this had went to trial, Bryan Kohberger's dad would have had to stood in the stand and say exactly what took place in that call, but because of the plea deal, we might never find out. In fact, we won't find out unless his dad speaks out, which is highly unlikely. Just another reminder as well, the prosecution, Bryan Kohberger's team had said to the judge basically that there's another 4 individuals that could be involved in this. The judge basically played it down as gossip, but this is what we need to remember, all right? Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on the knife sleeve, which was under Maddie, right under her. It just seems weird, right, okay? But it was right under her. I'd say placed there, okay? But there's another 2 bits of DNA. One in the stairwell and the handle and a glove outside that has never been tested, and the judge has ruled it out and said it shouldn't be tested. Why not? It's a murder scene. Also, Kings Road was actually owned by the university, and they were desperate to get rid of it, desperate to get rid of the evidence, to take it away, just act like it never happened. Now, there's a lot of reasons this could be. There was a young boy who passed away in Idaho, which has not been classed a homicide, but should have been classed a homicide. After a night out, he was found outside, and this was weeks and weeks before, and they all connect around the Idaho case as well. But another reason they might not wanted this case to go ahead is because it was already cost them $4 million, the Idaho state, And if it went to trial, the trial would have took 3 months. So there's a lot of reasons to why they wouldn't really want that to go to trial. But again, for the parents, some of the parents are happy that he's admitted it. Now, why has he admitted it? That's the question. Now, when 9 times out of 10 a plea deal like that, they can actually see what they did, what happened. He was asked, did you murder Zana, Maddie, Kaylee and Ethan? He said yes, didn't say why. He's had to do it to save his life. Idaho State changed their death penalty recently, very, very recently, to firing squad. In fact, they started a new department where it's closed down to January next year so they can make that happen, because they had full intentions of Bryan Kohberger being there. Also, the prosecution accepted that plea deal. Why did they accept the plea deal? Because they worried more was going to come out, aka the DNA and other bits of evidence that is not being allowed to be spoke about, because there's a lot of sealed discoveries with this as well, which means it could be sealed from now to eternity. It will depend on the judge. Sentencing is the 23rd of July, and we should find out exactly what he's going to be sentenced to. But just to let you know, with the plea deal, he can still appeal that. He's still got the right to appeal it. Even though he's agreed to it, he still has the right to appeal it. Remember I said that. Thank you for watching. That's the update on the Idaho case. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do your thing. Happy days.